I would sort of reframe it, which is just adoption is not going to make you win in a market, right? So what I argue in the book too, and I use this anecdote from Charlie Munger when Berkshire Hathaway was invested in textile mills, and one of their senior executives runs in and tells Warren Buffett there is a textile mill that's twice as efficient, and the expectation was everyone's going to get excited, and we're going to get this latest technology, etc. But as Charlie Munger points out, someone like Buffett really understands the impact of what off the shelf technology has. And his reaction is, if that's the case, we'll check if that's the case. If that's the case, we're going to exit the business. And I think the key insight here that a lot of us, or anyone who's excited about technology and about moving forward and operating doesn't realize, or what's important to keep in mind is this is a market, right? Meaning if you can buy technology off the shelf, right? And let's assume that let's give the benefit of doubt to the technology vendor, right? Let's say it does increase output, right? Productivity, whatever, right? So broadly it makes that better, that that what it promises to do. So if that's the case, you buy that technology off the shelf, the vendor is going to go to the next guy and sell it to them, right, in the market. And so now what's going to happen is that everyone in your market will buy that technology, right? And will start, in the best case, right, will start using it to whatever extent, right? And what that results in, right, is that demand for whatever you're offering in the market, whatever value you're delivering to your customer, has not changed dramatically, but supply now has increased.
Yeah.
And this is really economics 101, right? What that's going to do is press prices down. And so now there are two winners in any kind of technology adoption cycle. The first winner is the vendor, right? The technology vendor, the person selling the textile mills, the person trying to get you to use off the shelf technology XYZ, right? And what they've essentially done, if you as a business think about your profit margins, right, as a stack, so sort of the most reliable, the most guaranteed part, the more risky ones, the more on the fringe, the more trendy part, most of the digital paradigm companies, right? So basically the software tech companies of the past 2 decades, they've essentially sold subscriptions, which means they're taking the most predictable part of your profit margin and skimming it off. What you are left with, right, as a business is the less profitable, more volatile part of the business. And then it's no surprise, right, that their profit margins, their gross margins are massive, that their valuations are higher, because they're essentially skimming off the best part of your business model. I think that's a very legit question, and I think the reason why I argue for simplification, I think, is important, and the very first principles reason, which is the following: that if you ask yourself, how is complexity born, right? Because if you say I want to simplify, then you first have to try to understand what is the mechanism that increases complexity. And there's Joseph Tainter, who's done work on the collapse of civilizations, and civilizations in some way are the largest form of organization that you can imagine. And he looked at a whole bunch of them, like I think more than half a dozen around the world, and he looked at it from a perspective of energy economics and efficiency and a whole bunch of and sort of complex systems, etc. And his finding, and his insight is the following, which is that complexity is born through day-to-day problem solving. Meaning, you're running a big enterprise, something breaks down somewhere, someone does their job, meaning they see it break down, they try to fix it, they eventually end up fixing it. And so if you think of it like a building, something gets chipped off, someone puts a bit of plaster, and then you repeat that, and you repeat that at scale. And that's the birth of complexity, right? No one wakes up in the morning and says, let me increase complexity. So complexity is born through this process of this self-correcting mechanism of sorts. My personal experience is that it's not as if they're doing too much. I think they're just not making sure it's empirically valid, right? So let me unpack that, right? So if you look at like, let's say you're doing construction work, so you have to buy a whole bunch of inventory, you have to keep it ready for various phases of your construction work, etc., right? So if for whatever reason now you try to forecast how much of what material, raw material, inventory, etc., tooling, whatever you'll need, and let's say you did a simple point forecast, right? So you said, okay, on this day I will need X units, on another day I will need Y units, etc. So so you try to do that for all your all your products, for all your materials, right? That's how most people usually do it. And it's super easy because the finance guy knows exactly what it means. It says, okay, so we'll need 7 units of this on that day, multiplied by the price means I need that much, budget available to buy it, right? So finance people love this. But if you look at it purely from an operational point of view, an execution point of view, this assumes basically that you have a 100%, more or less 100% certainty on how many units you're going to need, which is not true. This is empirically just not valid. There is a fundamental, irreducible uncertainty in the world you operate in, and so now if you started looking at this as if you now model this probabilistically, so you say, look, 80% probability we're going to need 7, but then there's a 15% probability we need one more or two more, right? And a small 5% probability we need a little less, right? Now suddenly you have a richer, more empirically valid representation of the world. It's not reality, right? We can't get there, but at least it's more rigorous. And now you might ask me, okay, but haven't you just made it more complex? What's the point of this, right? Like, I mean, how do I show someone a probability distribution? The point is, this is not to show to your finance guy. You can still give him the number 7, he'll multiply it by the price and budget his stuff, right? Or she can do that. The point where this becomes now useful for your entire portfolio of inventory and products that you'll need is that now that you have a distribution, it allows you to optimize decisions. Right? So now it allows you to model trade-offs. What if I need 9 units and I only kept 7, right? What's the cost of having 2 less? If that cost is that my construction project is delayed by a month, right, then it's a no-brainer that you buy 3 or 5 more and keep them on inventory, because that so now suddenly you're looking at envelopes of decisions, and now your decision making abstraction, your framework for decision making has just gotten way more rigorous, and gives you the flexibility, the rigor, right, and the dynamism to just decide better and move faster and just win compared to anyone who's not doing that. So I think something that shaped me a lot was a whole bunch of books around our longer term investing and value creation. Richer, Wiser, Happier, The Education of a Value Investor, Thando Investor, The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. Right? So I think the entire sort of community of people around the world that is interested and tries to think longer term and create value and compound value longer term. I think that's something I find very fascinating. I'm not personally, I don't run a fund or something, or I don't invest, but I think that thinking is something that has really sort of shaped how I see things and how I try to operate. So the idea is, you think like an investor, and then you execute to try to operate and execute better.